So this morning I would like to go over a topic that people overlook, a phrase that Paul used that people misunderstand. Please note that Peter the apostle warned everyone. Do not twist the words of Paul. He said that the unlearned and the unstable, they twist the words of Paul just like they do the other scriptures. And so doing will bring themselves to destruction. So the words of Paul, we will go to Romans 11. And verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel until. In other words, the blindness that happened to Israel in part has a limited time. Until when? Until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. Where did Paul get that statement from? Before I go there, I want to show you the word fullness in the Greek and its many meanings and interpretations. And so when we're done looking at Strong's Concordance, you will ask, how are we going to know what Paul meant? With all these meanings and interpretations, it's very easy. Very, very easy. I'll explain in just a minute. First, let's go to Strong's Concordance. The word fullness in the Greek is 4138 in the Greek dictionary, and the word is pleroma. Pleroma. So we will start with the first meaning. Don't forget that the words in the English language, one word can have several meanings. And our duty today is to find out what Paul meant by fullness of the Gentiles. Okay, the first meaning of the word, etymologically speaking, it has a passive sense, that which or has been filled up. Well, that's obvious, okay? Very rarely so in classical Greek, a ship inasmuch as it is filled, manned with sailors, rowers, and soldiers. What do you mean, very rarely is this interpretation used? Then why is it the first, number one here? Okay, another one is the body of believers as that which is filled with the presence, power and agency, riches, etc. Okay, so now let's look at interpretation number two. That which fills, or with which a thing is filled. So very frequently in classical Greek from Herodotus down, especially of those things which ships are filled, freight, merchandise, sailors, oarsmen, or like the filling of Noah's Ark, the population, inhabitants, filling a city. That's from Plato and from Aristotle. All right. Within this second definition, lo and behold, we go down here and Romans 11 verse 12 is mentioned of time. Fill the fullness of time. Who was it that wrote Romans 11? Oh, it was Paul, wasn't it? Fullness of time. Romans 11 verse 12. I'll start in verse 11. I say then, have they stumbled that they should fall? Jehovah forbid, but rather through their fall salvation has come to the Gentiles for to provoke them to jealousy. Now if the fall of them be the riches of the world, or the riches of the Gentiles, and the diminishing of Israel, the riches of the Gentiles, how much more their, or Israel's fullness? So when Paul is talking about fullness, as we just read in Strong's Concordance, he's talking about the fullness of time. Time limit. So, we can now interpret what Paul said in Romans 11:25, the fullness of the Gentiles, in the same way that it can be interpreted, or that it is interpreted, in Romans 11 and verse 12. And this is backed up by one more scripture from the Messiah himself. Luke 21. Luke 21. It is extremely unfortunate that the preachers have deliberately deceived the people, deliberately deceived the Christian masses concerning Luke 21 verses 20 through 24. They pretend as if this never happened. They pretend that this is something in the future. Verse 20, and when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies. What armies? The Romans' 4 legions. Titus, the Roman general. Vespasian, ordered by Nero. Yes, this happened beginning in the spring of 67 AD. Listen very carefully. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then you know that its desolation thereof is nigh. Was Jerusalem made desolate by Titus the Roman general? To claim that this is yet to happen is denying history and makes one a Holocaust denier. To deny that Titus the Roman general destroyed Jerusalem makes that person a Holocaust denier. Then know that the desolation of Jerusalem is near. Then let that are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them which are in the midst of it depart out. And let them that are in the country, or in the rural areas, let them not enter into Jerusalem. For these are the days of vengeance. Vengeance for what? Well, they fell upon the rock. Okay? That all these things that are written may be fulfilled. But woe unto them that are with child, and to them that are suck in those days. For it shall be great distress in the land of Israel, the land of Judea, the land of Jerusalem, and wrath upon this people. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. Has that not happened? Those who say this is yet to happen, you are Holocaust deniers. Because you see, the Holocaust was not a one-time event. it began with the destruction of Jerusalem. Now, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be what? Be fulfilled. So the proper usage of that word in the context with Romans 11 verse 12 and Romans 11 verse 25 is a time limit. The times of the Gentiles has a time limit. What then is the times of the Gentiles, and what does it mean? It is about the dominion of the Gentiles over Jerusalem. We see this very day, even though the Jews took East Jerusalem in 1967, guess what? Jerusalem is still being trodden down by the Gentiles. That's right. The Gentile nations have not allowed Israel to throw out the mosques, the Arabs and their mosques, and the Christians and their mark of the beast, their steeples, their idols. But that time is coming to an end. And when that time comes to an end, all Israel shall be saved, as it is written, as Paul wrote in Romans 11. Verse 25, for I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel until, so the blindness won't be forever, until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, or until the dominion of the Gentiles over Jerusalem has ended. And so all Israel shall be saved. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness for Jacob, for this is my new covenant unto them when I shall take away their sins. Now let's go to Daniel. We'll go to Daniel 2 and then we'll go to Daniel 7. Do both. I'll get Strong's Concordance up just in case I need it. Okay, when King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream, it was up to Daniel to interpret it. Verse 31, you, O king, saw and beheld a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was excellent. No, it was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay. You saw until a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon its feet, that were of iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. Then was the iron and the clay, the brass, the silver and the gold broken into pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, and no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. What is he describing? He's describing when the times of the Gentiles has come to the fullness. and what happens to the Gentiles. That's what he's describing. Verse 36, and this is a dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. You, O king, are a king of kings. For the Elohim of heaven has given you a kingdom of power and strength and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven, and he has given you all into your hand and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. And after you shall come another kingdom inferior to you, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, forasmuch as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things. As iron it breaks all these, shall it break in pieces and bruise. That was Christian Europe. And therefore, and you saw the feet and the toes of potter's clay and part of iron, and the kingdom shall be divided, and there shall it be in the strength of the iron, forasmuch as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. We see this today in Christian Europe as they invite the mud people into their lands. But they cannot integrate because mud does not integrate with iron. It does not happen. It does not mix. Verse 42, and as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men. And boy, Europe has sure done it. But they shall not cleave to one another. No, diversity doesn't work. Even as iron is not mixed with clay. And in those days, shall the Elohim of heaven set up a kingdom, which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to, as Trump said, we're going to leave this to other people. It is written here, the kingdom of Jerusalem is not going to be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces. Yes, that rock, whosoever that rock falls upon will be ground into fine powder, as we just read. It shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand up forever. Forasmuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and it broke in pieces, the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, and the great Elohim has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation is sure. Let us now go to Daniel 7. The fourth beast is the beast of iron. This is so easy to understand once you get your preacher out of the equation. Are you willing to do that? Daniel 7 and verse 1, in the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions in his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matter. Daniel spoke and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven strove upon the what sea? The Great Sea, otherwise known as the Mediterranean Sea. And four great beasts came up out of the sea, different from one another. The first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And I beheld until the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. That was the head of gold, Nebuchadnezzar. And I beheld another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised itself up on one side, and had 3 ribs in its mouth between the teeth of, and it was said unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. This was the Medo-Persian Empire. The Persian Empire was the kings of the Medo-Persian Empire were actually Medes, although the empire was called Persian, which is interesting. Very interesting. But one side had dominion over the other. That's the reason why it says it was raised itself up on one side. Verse 6, And after this I beheld in another, like a leopard, which had on its back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast also had 4 heads. Well, that was the Grecian Empire with 4 heads. 4 after Alexander the Great died unexpectedly, there were 4 divisions of the Grecian Empire. And dominion was given unto it. So dominion was given unto each kingdom. Verse 7, After this I saw the night visions, behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly, and had great iron teeth. This is the beast of iron. And it devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with its feet, and it was different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. And so you see, the 10 kingdoms of Europe are the beast of iron. And just as in Daniel 2 talks about 10 toes. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them a little horn. The Vatican is the smallest kingdom in the world. Has always been and shall always be the tiniest kingdom in the world. Go look up the acreage of the Vatican and you will be shocked. Little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. Trying to remember, that was the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. Ostrogoths or Visigoths. Those 3 were destroyed, annihilated, uprooted by the man at the Vatican. You can go and do your research and you will find this is the case. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and had mouth speaking great things. Yes, he calls himself the greatest of all, the Father. Verse 9, And I beheld until the thrones were cast down. You see, this is the fullness of the Gentiles, folks. That means their time has come to an end. Their time of dominion has come to an end. That's the fullness of the Gentiles. Their thrones were cast down, and the Ancient of the Days, that's Jehovah the Father, did sit, whose garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head like pure wool, like fine wool. His throne was like the fiery flame, and his wheels as a burning fire. See Ezekiel 1. And a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. Thousands and thousands ministered unto him, and 10,000 10,000s stood before him. The judgment was set, and the books were opened. And I beheld, because the voice of the great words which the horn spoke, and I beheld till the beast was slain. The horn and the beast are 2 different things. The beast he was talking about was the beast of iron. The beast of iron was slain, and his body destroyed and given to the burning flame. We read about that in Ezekiel 39 and verse 6, where it says, "And I will send a fire on Gog and those who dwell carelessly on the coastlands of" what? The great sea. This is the fire he's talking about. He was given to the burning flame. Verse 12, as concerning the rest of the beasts. Oh. They had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. So it appears that the beast of iron, the European beast, will be set on fire, was given to the burning flame. By what? Well, either by nukes or by fire from Jehovah himself, or by the sword which comes out of the mouth of the Messiah, or all three. As concerning the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season. And I saw the night visions, and beheld one like the Son of Man, that's Yeshua Moshiach, Yeshua the Messiah, came with a cloud, singular, of heaven, and came to the Ancient of Days. So we see the Ancient of Days coming to the earth first, rendering judgment against Israel's enemies, the Gentiles, and beckoning the Son of Man to come forward to receive the kingdom. And they brought him near before him, and that Son of Man was given dominion and glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages must serve him, and his dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall never pass away, and his kingdom that which shall never be destroyed. Now I will go to a different version of the Bible, New International Version, and I will continue reading. Verse 15, and I, Daniel, was troubled in spirit, and the visions that passed through my mind disturbed me. I approached one of those standing there and asked him the meaning of this. So he told me and gave me the interpretation of these things. The four great beasts are four kingdoms which will rise from the earth. But the holy people, that's the Jews, for those of you who do not know this, of the Most High will receive the kingdom, Jerusalem. They already have Jerusalem, folks, right now. But the Gentiles will have to be driven out because they are still trampling on Jerusalem. Of the Most High will receive the kingdom and will possess it forever. Yes, forever and ever. And when I wanted to know the meaning of the fourth beast, which was different from all the others and most terrifying with its iron teeth, brass claws, the beast that crushed and devoured and trampled its victims underfoot, I also wanted to know about the 10 horns on the head and about the other horns that came up, before which 3 of them fell, and the horn that looked most imposing than the others, or more imposing than the others, and had eyes and a mouth that spoke great things. And I watched while this horn was waging war against the holy people and defeating them. That's you, Europe. Your Vatican, your king at the Vatican was doing this. Until, and they continued to trample Jerusalem until the Ancient of Days, the Father, our Father in heaven, came and pronounced judgment in favor of the holy people, the Jews of the Most High. And the time came, once again, the time came to an end. The time of the Gentiles comes to an end. The time of the Gentiles' dominion has come to an end. And the Jews once again possess the kingdom. And he gave me this explanation. The fourth beast is the fourth kingdom that will appear on the earth. It will be different from all the other kingdoms and will devour the whole earth, trampling it down and crushing it. The 10 horns are 10 kings which will come from this kingdom. After them another king will arise, different from the early ones. He will subdue 3 kings, and he will speak against the Most High. And boy, did he ever. And oppress the holy people. Oppress the Jews. And I have made hundreds of videos pointing this out. And try to change the set times and the laws, and the holy people will be delivered into his hand for a time and half a time. That happened at the hand of the king of Rome, 67 AD, in the early part of 67 AD to the fall of 70 AD. But the court will sit. That's already happened, folks. There is no more destruction of Jerusalem. But the court will sit, and his power, whose power? The king of Rome. The man who sits on the imperial throne of Caesar. That's the Vatican now. Will be taken away and completely destroyed forever. There's no getting around it, folks. Completely destroyed forever. And the sovereignty and the power and the greatness of all the kingdoms under heaven will be handed over to the holy people, to the Jews of the Most High. His kingdom shall be an everlasting kingdom, and all rulers will worship and obey him. This is the end of the matter. I, Daniel, was deeply troubled in my thoughts, and my face turned pale. But I kept the matter to myself. Okay. We're about to see this happen, folks. Prepare yourselves.